Miles has had a couple of sherbets.
Miles has had a few sherbets. Right, Andy's a scrum half.
Andy's a scrum half. He passes to the number 10.
He passes it. So you just copied what Simon said?
Yeah, pretty much.
You're listening to Bears Beyond the Gate, a Bristol Bears podcast made by fans for fans, with three friends who love the club, the game and all things Bears. This week, and after a little break to recharge our podding batteries, we review what's been going on in Bear Country over the last fortnight. First off, there was the ultimately failed attempt of the men to qualify for the knockout rounds of the Premiership Cup, despite an 8th victory against Bath at Ashton Gate yesterday. We talk about that game and also discuss whether it's fair for season ticket holders to feel pretty disgruntled about how it all panned out. On a more positive note, the women have now qualified for a playoff semi-final at Gloucester Hartbury with an impressive 19-12 victory at Quins on Friday, and also with a helping hand from Saracens ladies who did a job on Exeter yesterday as well. We also talk about that game, or the Quins game, and briefly look forward to the playoffs as the women strive to reach their second Premiership final on the trot. Finally, we amble through a few more general topics that have arisen, including feedback from the recent fans forum, questions and comments from loyal listeners, and a couple of gentle goats to finish us off. I'm Pete, and I'm joined by Miles and Lee for a cheeky beer and a bit of rugby banter. Well, boys, we're back. We're back. We're back at the Bristol Beer Factory, and some of our long-time or long-suffering listeners will be pleased to know it's not raining.
Yay!
For a change.
So hopefully we won't have that excess sound on the tent roof.
But we should say what we're drinking, shouldn't we, tonight?
We should.
We've had a lovely... shall I start? Because I've had the milk stout to start with, and I'm drinking currently a low rider, which is lovely. Yeah, perfect.
Nice. It's an unusual combo.
Yeah,
I think.
It is an unusual combo because I might go back to stout after, but it's it's an in-betweener, this one.
An in-betweener.
Yeah.
Talking about the in-betweeners, Miles.
Yay!
Briefcase. No, Miles. What are you drinking?
Well, I went for a classic laser juice.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely, to start with. And I'm mixing it up with Lee, and I also am now enjoying a lovely pint of Low Rider.
Another Low Rider.
This is sort of like a really nice session APA. And we'd just like to, as we always do, thank our very generous host, Bristol Beer Factory, and the as equally generous assistant manager Lewis, who helps us out and supports the pod and our drinking generally.
He's like pod support staff, isn't he? Like in any kind of production, you've got people behind the scenes, you've got directors, producers, you've got runners, you've got editors.
I mean, talking of Low Rider, like when sort of like people do tours, film stars and like pop stars, they have this thing called a rider, don't they? When they arrive, they do. When they arrive and like, so what do you we've got you this studio. What do you want? Like some people say, like a dog, a bottle of vodka, and there we are. And as Lewis has provided us with a Low Rider.
Isn't that famous? Like Mariah, like we're off topic already, but didn't Mariah Carey famously have a rider where she wanted like rose petals all across her dressing room floor? Yeah. It's a bit like Miles. Miles just wants a couple of carrots from his allotment on the floor.
And obviously, the big one was Elton John, wasn't it? When he used to spend like $5,000 on flowers in the dressing room, didn't he?
It is.
Well, I actually had first-hand experience of that.
Did you?
Yeah, because it's totally off topic. I'll make it quick.
Hang on, you've had first-hand experience of Elton John
and flowers in the dressing room. And flowers in the dressing room. Yeah, I mean, it was back in the day when I was going down the gym down the City Ground, which is one of City. I don't know, you boys would know this, but one of City's old legendary players, a goalkeeper called Mike Gibson, Gibbo, and he used to run a gym down the City Ground, and so we go down to gym. One day, we walked into the home dressing room, which is where we were based to get changed, and it was full of drapes and millions of flowers all around the place, and it was when Elton John was performing in there.
Well, I never.
So
I never. Well, just to get us back on track. So basically,
for those way back into
for those
the pod.
people that are losing interest, we're kind of alluding to the fact. And by the way, that's just reminded me that I've now retired the cliche bell because somebody said that it was getting annoying us hitting it all the time.
Yeah, so it broke as well.
It broke as well.
That was probably the real reason.
But I suppose what we're saying is that the studio sort of bar in the factory is a bit like our green room, and Lewis is our kind of tour manager, and he sorts out the rider for us every Sunday. And as my mate Mooney said, who I saw down the gate yesterday, he was a big fan of the pod, he said basically you just do a podcast in a lock-in, don't you? And I was thinking he's right. You know, this pub is now closed, and we're here doing it.
It's our natural environment, isn't it?
It is a bit different.
Yeah, I mean, how many podcasts, rugby podcasts out there
happening in a lock-in,
are doing it after hours? Well, there you go. Anyway, let's move on. And we should say, actually, just reminded me, Bristol Beer Factory, is that I did promise Lewis I was going to plug an event here. So on Thursday the 20th of February, this Thursday at 7:30, so it's a 7 o'clock for a 7:30 start, in the studio bar where we're sat now, they're having a quiz night. £5 entry per team, maximum 5 people in each team. And it's going to be quite Bristol based.
Yeah.
There's going to be some Bristol sport questions, beery questions. And they did say on their advertising that it's worth, if you're going to come down, email to reserve a table. But apparently they are going to put a little premium on the table that we record the pod on, this one.
Well, I actually heard that one of the questions, I know I shouldn't really divulge this information, one of the questions was, which seat does Miles pod royalty sit on? So, but apparently you have to sniff it to be able to smell it.
And Miles has just left, as you were talking, Lee, a little clue.
Yes.
A little clue has been left in the studio bar.
And we won't say which table it's on.
We won't say which table it's on, but if you are those people, you'll get a little present. Right, let's move on.
Yes.
So, anyway, Miles, we're going to start with the Bears women, I think, because they were the first team, played first, and actually achieved something. Like they actually got to a knockout round.
They qualified.
So I feel that although this podcast started as a sort of men's team-based one, I feel like now we're starting with the women all the time because they've achieved something. But so anyway, as a lot of you out there will know, they played Quins away on Friday night. It was their last game of the regular season, and they definitely needed to win, and they needed to get the 4 points. There was some debate about whether they actually needed a bonus point or not, but a win was what they needed, enough. And the girls delivered. They delivered. They really did. It was a pretty, it was a fairly tight, fairly tight 19-12 victory, and apparently it was the biggest crowd they've ever had at the Stoop. For a women's game, because of course they did break the record when they were at the big game, but that's not quite the same.
No.
So they actually, I mean, I watched
it was 7,000, which is
7,000,
great.
Yeah.
And the Stoop, they put on a light show like they do for the men, so it sounded like a great.
They do a good job.
They do a good job. And I say I watched it on iPlayer actually, and it looked like there was quite a few Bears fans had travelled down as well, because you could hear a bit of bristoling going on in the background as well. So yeah, it was really good, and of course. Dave Ward, at the end of the day, I think he picked pretty much the best, strongest team he could, and they delivered. It was as I said, it's 19-12. It sounds pretty close game, and it was, because they're two really good sides. And of course, you and me, Miles, saw Harlequins beat our lot at Shaftesbury Park early in the season, and we didn't really lay a hand on them, really.
No, I think they had like 14 to 21 unanswered points in the second half,
And we had, on Friday we had the Red Roses engine room. We had Sarah Byrne, Hannah Bottoman, Lark Davis. We had Abby Ward, and we had Holly Cunningham, who has been in an England training squad. So we were absolutely front five. And then we had Kira Bevan, who's kind of is established our scrum half now. Holly Aitchison, and then we had Amber Reid at 12, Phoebe Murray at 13. Alona Meyer on one left wing, Renika Bonner on the other, and Courtney Kate
we couldn't lose. We couldn't lose.
It did look to me like a more balanced side than. The last time we saw them, Miles and me went and saw them lose to Lightning down at Shaftesbury Park, and it was a difficult game. That we just never quite looked like the second half we could get control of it, and maybe it just wasn't quite right. So anyway, Miles,
we didn't click on that particularly.
No, we didn't click there at all.
Absolutely, no.
But it's pretty impressive that they had two pretty disappointing defeats. They had the one at Ealing, the 1 point defeat at Ealing, then the Lightning. Yeah. And, at that point, it was looking pretty dodgy.
Well, that shows some character to me.
It does show character. And it shows good coaching as well and good management. So, Miles, you've watched the game, or you watched quite a lot of it. What's your general thoughts on it?
Well, yeah, I got to watch, unfortunately, I got home late Friday night, wanting to watch the whole game, watched the second half, and it was pretty harem-scarum, as you boys said. There were a fair few handling errors from both sides. Ultimately, we came away with a win. And then having re-watched the game this morning it was on TNT, which is great. Actually, BBC it was on as well. Yeah. So they've suddenly started to pay a bit of interest.
I wonder why.
Yeah, exactly. And as I said to Lee walking down, I was still watching it again this afternoon. I forgot the tries and was cheering. At 70 minutes, oh yes, come on!
That's what I love about it. Is Miles knew the score.
I knew the result,
and yet he was still invested.
And I was still impressed by the scoring. And I remember we had a turnover on 74 minutes. I was like, but and then Evie Gallagher had a jackal at 77, and the passion was still there, which is what I love about rugby, which was great. I mean, it was an absolutely phenomenal result. I think before the game, we'd seen Quins come down to Chelsea Park. They had a pretty convincing win in the second half. This was a huge win, going away. And they've got some internationals in their side. They've got World Player of the Year, Ellie Kildan, haven't we, who scored 2 tries. And it was brilliant. But the defence stepped up. You're right. I think we picked the best possible team. And I agree on this occasion. There's a great plan in Bristol. They integrate all the girls and move around positions. But on this occasion on Friday night, I do believe, I agree with you, Pete, they pick the best players that are fit in the best positions that they play in.
Amen to that.
And it flipping well worked. Yeah. We had some good leadership back. We had Sarah Byrne, who had an amazing game. Player of the match was Christina, I think, Balogun. It was just sort of really unassuming, but it's so much work, really.
Is she your Stephen Nuatua?
She is.
Well, she plays on the flank. She's very unassuming, but her work rate was through the roof. And you could have said, you look at Sarah Byrne, who's a Red Rose, who just unbelievable game, and she gets, Christina gets Player of the Match, and hats off to it. Hats off to her, to be honest with you. Yeah. And the engine room and the pack did a brilliant job. Even the backs, I think having Holly Aitchison back, Kira Bevan, and Holly Aitchison did some amazing sort of passes.
She gives that solidity as well.
Yeah, and I think the centre combination on Friday night of Amber Reid and Phoebe Murray cemented that win, in my opinion, which is what Amber Reid's come back from an injury, have a lone Amara in one wing. Yeah, right players in the right position, and it just showed the experience and got the win.
It's amazing how coaches and even international coaches over history just seem to find that very difficult, isn't it? To put the right players in the right positions, playing where they've been before. Brilliant, Miles. A couple of things I'll pick up from you on there. Just that got me thinking. Christiana Balogun, I had never heard her speak.
No.
And I just thought she was French. No offence. I just thought she was, she was a French player. She got Player of the Match. She was interviewed. She was like the most well-spoken. It was like listening to a female version of Miles. It was, I almost thought she was very well-spoken. She was very, very polite. She was very self-depreciating. And they said to her...
she was polite, and you just said she was like Miles.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But the interesting thing was that whoever was interviewing her said, you put in a big shift, and that seems to be your job. She said, oh, yes, my job is just to tackle and cheer. And I thought, that's exactly what you want. I loved it. I love it. It was so refreshing. It was such a refreshing interview. So
I'm going to have to watch that.
It's worth looking after because she put in a massive shift. So really good from Christiana. Yeah, a couple of other things I'd mention. Interestingly, we talked about this, I think, a few pods ago, where we wondered whether the women were still trying to learn the Bears way and would do it, especially after that Ealing game. We were talking about how they were trying to play out their 22 the whole time, and it went wrong, and that was one of the reasons. And perhaps they weren't quite as attuned to it. The interesting thing in this one is that we kicked about 3 times in the first 7 minutes, and Kira Bevan hit a 50-22. Holly Aitchison mixed it up a bit, and it looked to me like they've added that layer of pragmatism, and they do a few phases, don't get anywhere, rather than just tiring themselves out going backwards and forwards. I mean, they clearly did that, and Holly Aitchison didn't do that against Lightning either, did she?
She didn't.
And I think we said, maybe they're
Plan B.
They need. I think it was just a better plan.
I think that we should be under no illusion that we're going to need that different
100%
mindset to play Gloucester.
And the interesting thing was that Harlequins had obviously assumed we were going to play out, and they had left a load of space in the back line, and we exploited that straight away. And that's really good planning, really good. I mean, that was just to me, and I think it set the scene very early on. And I think Quins never really got back into. They knew that we had a good plan, and they were struggling to deal with it.
I mean, there is a downside to that, though. I mean, Gloucester. Now we've done it. Gloucester are obviously more aware of it. We could do it.
But of course, what you do is you mix it up.
Yes.
So you know, and there was
you don't know what's coming.
So, for example, the first try, which was Phoebe Murray, it's from a 50-22 from Kira Bevan, great kick. You would have assumed that, given our pack, it would be line out, rolling maul, Lark Davis, scoring. But what they did, straight off the top, straight to Kira Bevan, pops it straight to Phoebe Murray on the crash ball straight over. So it was clever. It was different. Harlequins weren't expecting it. And then, the rest of the game, I thought, Ellie Kildunn scored a couple, she's a good player and we didn't really do that much wrong. She was just very good. But I felt as though, we controlled the game. Sarah Burns scored, didn't she? We did our requisite kind of push over try.
And another talk about mixing up. I mean, that's it. Lark Davis threw straight to Alicia Joyce Butchers at the front of the, on a line out, and basically just ran over the line.
Just straight to the front,
unexpected, through the gap. So the mixing up, I think the difference on Friday night just showed that they can mix it up. You're right, it's not just like the backs. We criticised them a little bit of pinging out to the wing and relying on Ronika Bonner or Millie David, who are phenomenally fast players, but the change up, maybe you're right. They're thinking if we're going to beat Quins, we just need to change it up, and that's what was successful.
And I think that bodes well for the Gloucester game because Dave Ward and Tom Luke, the two coaches, that was to me. That was a coach's victory on Friday.
You got to congratulate the staff and the players.
100%. And obviously they know it's only half a job done. We've still got to do it. But I think given where we were after, especially that Ealing game, I remember the post-match, Dave Ward looked disappointed that happened. And there were a few other things on that game it was a 12 o'clock start. I remember him saying, and they had, the Welsh girls had to get up and come from West Wales to get to Ealing. There was a few. So in hindsight, there was a few things. But anyway, it was really good. I just feel like last year, we're just starting to build. You had a little blip, and now we're starting to build.
Yeah. I don't know, because last season it did feel like we were the team that got in, but it feels slightly different this year. But I think in a more positive way, it feels like we've. Like you say, mixing the game up. It feels. I don't know.
I think Dave Ward will be probably the first to admit that there's been quite a lot of inconsistency, haven't there, throughout the season?
I think, to be fair, he's honest enough that he's admitted that.
There's not many games, and there's been some major injuries in all the key players and some of our great players who've come back at the right time. Yeah. So, let's segue into the fact that they have brilliantly, and let's not deny this. Squeezed themselves into the playoffs. It was looking a bit bleak 2 weeks ago. I think we'll all admit that. And Gloucester Hartbury have secured themselves top spot, so they've got a home semi-final. And let's not deny the women have got to go up to Gloucester on, let's just say, on Sunday, March the 2nd, 3 p.m. kickoff.
3 p.m. kickoff.
All those fans, including us, who are going to try and get there for a very, very tough game.
And as one of our long-time listener, Marcus Watts, commented, having me put out a kind of clarion call again for any questions or comments about either teams, Marcus put, as is his way, because he's a great wordsmith, he says, let's turn it to Queen's home.
King's home to Queen's home.
And he even put like a blue and white on that. And on that note, we also had a comment from another regular listener, Paul Mizzen, who we now know is the granddad, with Spencer the son and Freddie the grandson.
Well, and he's the ringer in the camp.
He's the ringer in the camp. And Paul said, I've watched women's rugby almost 40 years ago. My mate refereed a few games. They set the path of what we have today, but nobody could have predicted the quality we have now. I loved Friday night. Exciting to the end, go Bears. And this is, no offence to Paul, this is an older chap. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this is like, you think that crusty, sort of older chap, I'm not saying Paul's crusty, but you know what I mean? It's quite unusual.
Crusty the clown.
but this is somebody who's watched a lot of rugby, and he's bigging up the women's game because he saw it happen, and I think that's where we are with the Bears team.
I agree.
So regardless of the ups and downs this season, and obviously the Alona Meyer factor has played a role, but they really are establishing themselves as an interest. And that takes me on to another tweet that I saw, which kind of reinforces this thing, is that big Mark Regan, as it says on his handle, Mark Regan MBE, he tweeted out on Friday something which I kind of thought was interesting, because I've seen Ronnie down the gate, and he's a unit, isn't he? He comes from a certain era of rugby, which I wouldn't necessarily think would be that interested in women's rugby.
Yeah.
But Ronnie had tweeted on Friday. You ought to read this out, because it would be in a bit of a Bristolian accent, wouldn't it, Lee? So you read it out. I've done it in bold. I've done it in bold for you.
Okay. Having watched at Bristol Bears women last night, I was so impressed by the skill and discipline from both sides. The referee didn't have much to do. I congratulate ladies. Sit back and watch the important match at 5:30 tonight. Hope results go your way, and a big thumbs up from Ronnie Regan.
And they have now. We know that.
Yeah.
So there you go.
That's great.
The women have got the endorsement of a Bristol legend.
Yes.
So let's all hope. And as Miles said, if you haven't thought about it, if you're not doing anything on
that MBE, is that member of Bristol?
Bristol Empire. Yes.
Bristol Empire. That's what I thought it was.
I mean, interesting. What if we had to discuss how far does the Bristol Empire go? Rather than
it certainly wouldn't stretch to you two muppets.
No, we wouldn't, would it? Right, look, we've got to move on. I just wanted to finish off the little women's section with a bit of fun, because as you boys know, I'm and some listeners might know if I've mentioned it, I'm a big fan of another pod called Football Cliches. And this is a brilliant pod, and even if you're not a football fan, it's worth listening to. They dissect sort of the language of football every week, and one of the things they love doing is taking the mickey out of commentators and co-commentators who under pressure, let's be honest, it's not easy, sometimes get things wrong or overuse cliches, and we know that very well. And the commentator for the women's game on Friday is I think it's a lady called Claire Thomas, who has done quite a lot of commentary, and fair to say she's quite Marmite in terms of fans, but she does love a cliche. And I thought, you know what? I snipped out a few of the cliches during the game, because I think there's a couple of things we need to mention. So, boys, what I thought we would do is I'll play the cliches.
We ain't got to listen to it.
And we're going to listen to it, and then we'll have a quick chat about it afterwards. So, you ready, fellas?
Let's do it. Go for it.
Here we go.
Since Bears bookended their Christmas with losses to Saracens and Gloucester Hartpury, the squeeze has been on, and their 2025 has been a saga of Herculean proportions. They've swung from mesmerising to infuriating and all the way back again, stuffing Exeter twice whilst conspiring to lose against Trailfinders and Loughborough. Still in the hunt, yes, but on a life raft held together with not much more than duct tape and prayers. Not to kill the mood, but this does seem like an appropriate time to remind you all that the legend of St. Valentine actually ends in an execution. There is romance, yes, but there is also peril, and that is exactly what the next 80 minutes are all about. The penultimate round of the 2025 PWR, potentially the final dance for Bristol Bears. Hold on to your hats. Proper road runners out on the Stoops turf right now. Reed in at first receiver finds Aitchison. Expect those two playmakers to interchange. Bears is an orchestra with almost as many conductors as instrumentalists. There are so many who can pull strings. Well, she's straight from scoring duties to being splashed on the TW2 grass. Holly Aitchison has the tee. The upright inhales and spits out the extras, so it will remain a 5-pointer, but what an opening 10 minutes. Knock can only watch as the ball bounces from her fingertips up over the top to Key, who pins her heels back. But it's Lucy Packer flying in from absolutely nowhere to make the tackle. Two big defensive involvements from the scrum halves, but off their feet. And Quins get a get out of jail free card and hand it right back to Bristol. 5-0 still this one. It's been end-to-end stuff, as Ross Chisholm alluded to in his interview. Ball in play has been through the non-existent roof at the Stoop. But with half an hour played, just that Phoebe Murray score. There we go, off chugs a Bear-branded train, and it's made itself up to the cusp of the 22. Bosserman pinwheeling. Well cuddled by Jade Kunkel. And found Gallagher. Bonner slammed into by Pena.
Pena is putting in one hell of a defensive effort at the moment. She's throwing herself around all over the place. Awesome to see.
She's got winged heels, the outside centre, but she's got shoulders made from molten titanium. Reed, again, calling the shots. Moore has it now.
So, boys, what do you think? There's some quality in there, isn't there? What do you want to start with, Lee?
Oh, I mean, there's so much, isn't there? And it's like being back in the classroom dissecting the frog again, isn't it?
It is a bit like.
I've got to say, let's finish with the last one. When they talk about the Quins 13, who had what was it, wings of an angel, but shoulders like molten titanium. And I'm thinking, if they're molten, they're not going to be very strong, are they?
I do agree. I mean, in what physics lesson did she learn the melting point of titanium? I'm not sure she really did.
I loved the raft being tied together with duct tape and prayers.
That was our hope. That was a
hope of winning, wasn't it?
I think, we're on a life raft held together barely with duct tape and prayers. I thought, we still had quite a good chance of qualifying. It wasn't like we were. I thought that was a little bit over the top with that one. Yeah. The other one, and then she went off, gave us a history lesson about Valentine. And I think both romance and peril, which, fair play, that was quite an interesting one, but it was a bit, I don't know whether it was necessary, to be honest. And then, the other one was that she got in the final dance, Bristol's final dance, which was good. But then she said, we had more conductors than instrumentalists pulling the strings, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, surely a good team has one conductor, and then but you don't just have string, or you have wind instruments.
Absolutely. It's a whole orchestra, but it's just strings.
And then of course the classic was. And then she said that Quins get a get out of jail card for free and then give it back to Bristol. So if you're giving then does that put you back in the jail? I'm not sure. And then there was the image of Hannah Bottomman pinwheeling, which I'm not quite sure what even that means. Dear. And then I think the
final straw was the alluded.
And she used the word alluded. But of course, we didn't
even have a bell.
We didn't even have a bell. And she did mention how Courtney Kate pinned back her heels. Yeah. Which do you pin back your ears or do you pin? I don't know. Claire, I'm sorry, but you did cause a lot of mirth, and we know what you're trying to do. But I just think it was a little bit too much, and that was just me picking out a few of them.
Well, I'd go as far as to say there's more cliches in that than there is puns in a filthy rigged article.
Exactly.
There we are.
Are you with me?
I am. But anyway, it was. I thought it was
very funny.
It's very funny, and I'm actually going to send that to the football cliches pod people, even though they hate rugby, and just say, look, you just got to listen to that because they'll love that. They love dissecting all that sort of stuff.
You send that to them. You're volleying it up for them.
And the other one was the fact that when Holly Aitchison missed the conversion, and it just hit the post. That's all it did.
Yeah. No, it did.
She said it inhaled the ball and then spat it out. And I got to say, I have never heard a description of a ball.
Of some rugby posts inhaling the
ball. How does a rugby post inhale anything? God. And if you inhale it, it's got to go inside the post first before it's spat out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because otherwise, what it really did, it was like it missed the ball and it hit. It was Claire. We love that, but we think that maybe you had too many of them already written down.
Well, maybe she inhaled a bit too much.
Maybe.
Too
much. Anyway, boys, we've got to move on.
Let's do it.
Okay. You're listening to Bears Beyond the Gate. If you like what you hear, then make sure you subscribe or leave a review or contact us, as many of you do, on Twitter at Bears Beyond Gate or Facebook or via our growing Instagram account, which is now followed by loyal listeners and illustrious current and past Bears players and staff, including And these are our followers, boys. Dave Ward, Tom Luke, James Dunn, Joe Batley, Jack Bates, Joe Joyce, Big Dave Atwood, of course, Mitch Eady, Callum Sheedy, Andy Oren, Ian Mads Madigan, Jess Sprague, Jenny Herring, Amber Reed, Holly Phillips, Courtney Kate, the official Bears site, and even the one and only Ian Downsy Downs. So we have all these.
Downsy.
So I mean, we don't have many followers, but we've got a very
that's the
focused
A-list
number.
right there.
Absolutely.
So, boy, if these people think it's worth following Bears Beyond the Gate, then I think a few more people out there need to as well.
I agree.
And we work very hard to put the odd story out from time to time. Anyway, we've got to move on, boys, because we've got the men to talk about. We forgot about that we've got a
We're
men's
half
team.
an hour in, and we
Half an hour in.
The boys.
We haven't mentioned the boys. So as we know, boys had a game.
Chronological order of games.
Yeah,
It's
so
fair play.
so we had a game at Ashton Gate yesterday against Bath. About 2 weeks ago, we thought that could be an absolute humdinger because we could both be going for qualification. It could be the sort of home game that we aren't going to have this season. As it were, I think 17,000 give or take were there. It was a good attendance. It was a good atmosphere. We had a very, very slim chance of qualifying with a 5-point victory, but we put out a very, very strong side. And they put out a younger side, and a couple of their fans moaned about it. And I said, well,
F off.
hang on, you beat us 17-0 at the Rec. And also, we haven't got many games. And actually, every team is doing this because they've got to give their players a run out, and you've already qualified. So there was a little bit of classic kind of behind, and we had a bit of banter on it. We got over it. But I did think, for the first time ever, I thought, actually, the Prem Cup isn't just about young players. And actually, we have put out quite a few young players.
Yeah, we have.
But we as much as anything, needed to qualify. Pat had stated we did need to qualify in order to get some game time. The fact we lost at Bedford was the problem, really.
Well, are we going to talk about
We'll get on to that, I think. But anyway, it was 21-all at half time, and it was me and Mars were down there, and it was a good game. We basically gifted them 21 points, but
it wasn't really end to end 21.
No.
I mean, they defended well. I've got to give them credit. There was some guy playing second row for them. He had a red scrum cap on, and he was putting in a massive shift. And I mean, we were hitting their line hard. Jan Bernard was hitting the line. Big Bill Matt was hitting the line, and they were getting getting rebuffed. So I thought that the Bath players put in a good defensive effort, but realistically they only scored because we gifted them 2 tries. And I mean, the first gift was it was ironic actually. We went 14-0 up. And I was thinking, we're looking good here. Maybe this could be a bit of maybe we are a little bit strong. I started to think maybe we have put out
like triple figures.
Yeah, but
potentially.
Classic restart. We muck it up, and then what do we do? Something happens, but then basically they got it. Then we got it back, and then because it was turnover ball, Gabs Ogre got it, but he kind of did the right thing. Miles was fuming, but he kind of flung it, and we did agree it was a fling, not a pass. It wasn't a throw. It was a fling.
He's gone from England A to England A minus.
Basically, Ogre, in a way, I know what Ogre was doing. It was like he was thinking, I want to get it wide quick. It was turnover ball. Let's get it wide quick. But he kind of he executed wrong, and it basically meant that McConaughey was able to pick it up, and he's a good finisher.
He basically flung it in the dead ball line, and McConaughey was quick enough to pounce on it and score.
Yeah, Miles is going, that's terrible. I was like, Miles, look, he did the right thing, he just did it wrong. And then the second, so then we were 14-7. And then I can't remember the next one. The other one we did was that I remember was we did a cross kick. Seaver padded it was from Byrne, cross kick. Seaver padded it back, but their scrum half sensibly had gone onto our half, ready for which I said all along is what I think is going to happen with these kicks now.
Rules,
So because you're not offside, and he picked it up and he basically ran in from the halfway line and he actually skinned Rich Lane a bit. He was good their scrum half, so that was a bit of a gift as well. And I can't remember, Mars, can you remember their third try or the other try? Because to me it was a gift. I can't remember what it was.
I can't remember, to be honest with you.
Was it another one where it might have been a turner? It might have been Gabs. It was another fling because it was a line out that we we stole it, and Gabs actually made a break from our line out, and I think he realised he was isolated, and actually he knew he's going to, if he had got tackled, he was going to get turned over, so he basically tried to fling it out to our centres, and I think he missed it again. But anyway,
do you know what?
It is what it is.
That reminds me, he did that in one game, didn't he?
Yeah.
You remember he did an amazing break?
Yeah.
And then
stopped. That's the
Quins game.
Stopped.
The Quins game, that's right.
Yeah. Because it's sensible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And actually, to be honest, apart from those two things, he had actually a really good game in the end, and he was pretty dynamic, and he was round there, and despite Miles only remembering the two flings that he did, I actually think Gabs was all right.
Yeah.
So
I think we just focused on the fact that
fine margins.
Yeah, fine margins. Kloska and Ogre have been picked for the England A squad, and we know we won't be allowed to play in that fashion under Lee Black, who's going to be coaching them. So, yeah, take my hat off. I think his line-out throws were great. His ruck speed was all right, and his attacking skill right. But he's not gonna fling it about for England A if he gets picked next weekend.
And like Pete said, I mean, he's flinging it around for a reason, isn't he?
Yeah.
We want to get the ball out wide as quickly as possible.
Yeah. So
when we had the players to score.
Yeah.
But
I just realised that I was going to start this little segment by playing us Pat's post-match, what he said about it. So we've had our little go, but I think maybe we'll bring it back. Should we listen to what Pat said after the game?
Go for it.
I think it's a good moment to bring it in, because then we maybe can comment on a couple of things.
That was a pretty full-blooded derby fixture. You must be pleased with the second half performance there, particularly.
Yeah, pretty pleased. I think we scored 61 points today. 21 we gifted Bath. We didn't even have to make any tackles, just gave them the ball. But fair play, boys. We started really well, and then obviously when we gift those 21, the boys worked their way back to all square at half time, and then came out stronger in the second half. Probably could have scored a few more, but the main thing now, we're really proud of our record, since I've been here. Supporters made it very clear to me that you don't lose to Bath at Ashton Gate. So we've had 8 games here at Ashton Gate since I've been here, and we're 8 from 8. So wonderful effort by the players. Just getting the win and no injuries. So we now got 4 or 5 weeks now. Just with everyone going to have a week. I'm looking forward to some time with the family finally. It's been a long break, long block. And then we'll hit the ground running in the training behind the closed doors and come out again against Exeter and start our running.
So there you go, boys. Pat was very clear that we scored 61 points there.
Do you reckon he was that jovial at half time?
I'm not sure. I think there did seem like a bit of an edge to that, and it did make me think that he would have pointed out that they didn't have to do anything.
Do you reckon Gabs had
to get the points?
He had the ruler mark across his back.
I think that
corporal punishment might have come back. I
think Pat would have said.
Across the knuckles.
I reckon even Pat might have used the word fling at half time as well. But it did remind me of that time when I think it was London Irish when we were 36-0 up, and then they came back to draw, and they scored loads at the end, and Pat said tackling seemed to be optional, and you did think on that day that there was a few people that had been lining up outside his door on the Monday were going to be a bit nervous.
You imagine that all Sunday, and you're in for it on the Monday.
But he made a good point that we got back into it. It took us a bit of time. I think it was 60 minutes before we actually got back into it. I think Harry Burns scored, and then we scored a good try from little Harry Rowson as well, and Sam Wolstenholme came on.
He did. He scored it.
Yeah, I mean, we were saying in fact, we were saying that it was like getting to about 75. We're thinking, why don't we bring, because Marmion had played well.
Yeah.
Why don't we bring Wolstenholme on, give him a bit longer? As we say that, like the oracles we are, Wolstenholme comes on, scores a try. We're like, mate, could have brought him on like 10 minutes ago. We could have got another one. No, it wasn't Worsley that scored. It was Wolstenholme scored. No, because I said Wolstenholme scored. Then I thought Wolstenholme was taking the conversion. And I was like, why is he converting his own try? And then the guy in front of me went, it's Worsley.
I think I
felt like Miles.
Yeah, because 2 W's came on at the same time.
I had a double.
enough to throw us.
Well, 2 W's and 2 pints at the same time.
Strangely, Worsley got pinged out to the wing. So I think that's why we were confused, because Harry Byrne did stay on.
Yes. No, he wasn't, Miles. No, we had this conversation. He wasn't on the wing. He went fullback. Worsley went fullback. He definitely went full, because Lena went off.
It wouldn't be Miles.
You can imagine we were having this conversation while the game was going on.
While beers were flowing, etc. Yeah, and let's just say that players were out of position, and so that doesn't say a lot to confuse me.
And talking about little Harry Rouse and him, he had a bit of a nightmare first 5 minutes, and there was one because it was really slippy and greasy, and there was one bit where the ball was bobbling around, and he was coming onto it. He went to pick it up, and he kind of slipped. So he almost did that famous Gaza thing when he's training, and he's trying to pick the ball up, and he keeps kicking it and picking up. And Harry Rouse kind of did that, and I laughed, which is really bad. And fair play to Harry Rouse, he didn't faze him. No. And then about 10 minutes later, he scored an amazing try in the corner, and I thought he went from kind of sub sort of zero to hero. So fair play to him.
He's going to make those mistakes. He's young lad, isn't he? But the important thing is, like you've said, it's not let it affect him at all. And he's gone in and he scored a brilliant try, hasn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, the annoying thing is actually what Pat didn't say is that by giving them 21 points, I think Bath ended up getting a home semi or quarter, or whatever it is, against Quins on points difference. So we must have, those Bath fans, those salty Bath fans. I'm waiting to hear from some thanks.
With a thank you
on because we obviously thanks for the gifts. So yeah, it was a good game. We enjoyed it. Good atmosphere.
Good attendance.
Good attendance. As Pat pointed out, it's been very made clear to him when he got here that you don't lose to Bath at home. No. And to be fair to him, he's delivered on that. He has delivered on that.
I mean, there might be a few... I mean, it's a good job we got 5 weeks off. There were a few minor injury tweaks, which we spotted on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, Harry Byrne kind of hobbled around a bit, didn't he?
He had his knees trapped up a bit, and the kicking duties were... given to Bernard towards the end. So something a little... He was hobbling, wasn't he?
There was a penalty that Bernard took out of the hand. And you remember when he did the kicking duties before, and he did one where he corkscrewed it sideways into touch. I was looking at him thinking, poor, he's not looking confident. He absolutely nailed it into the corner. But it's almost like he was so excited, he almost turned to the crowd and waved. And then he took one conversion he got in, that was and then he took one by us and he just shanked it to the right. So
he did. So back in it. I mean, talking of nice little kicks, I mean, Harry Byrne potentially kicked the best 50-22 we've seen all season. In fact, I've described it as 22 to 22. A massive spiral bomb. That ultimately got us the line out and we scored from. I mean, it
was a thing of beauty.
It was absolutely
ridiculous. The talent he's got.
He is such a good player. And actually, that was the thing that I would say is that he's added that layer that AJ has done as well, but even better in some ways. There was when we'd gone backwards and forwards a few times, and because Bath were defending really well in the first half, and we couldn't quite find those gaps. Yeah. He put in a couple of fantastic kicks, a couple of chip kicks. He did everything we said. There's nothing wrong with kicking. It's just got to be good. Yeah. And 2 50-22s, I think we scored our tries after on the line-outs from those. But my only worry with Bernie is he hobbled off again, although there is news that AJ may well be back for Gloucester, but then do you put him straight on? So we still need... I think we still need a fit Harry Byrne just because we've got a load of tough games to come, and it was also good to see Sam Worsley come on. Yes. There was a bit of debate between me and Miles about whether he was on the wing or whether he was at fly half or full back, and I was very clear to Miles that he's at full back, but it's hard to tell.
Yeah, and another injury return.
But then I made a mistake because Sam Wolstenholme came on and scored, and then I said, "Oh, look, he's going to convert his own try." And then the bloke in front said, "No, it's Worsley." Like that, I was like, "Oh no!"
How many two-pointers did you boys have?
We'd had. Well, it's it doesn't take much.
We do sit quite far back in the Dolman, and we're old men.
So and it's and the rain was coming down. It's quite hard. And they do look the same. I mean, they're about the same height. They've got dark hair, and they're about the same age. So it was quite easy to make that mistake.
I thought it was just Clara Thomas that did all the cliches.
We might add that Siva Naralango was back after
he scored a good try.
Long spell. I mean, he's got a good try.
Came off his wing.
I did say I'm slightly concerned. He was out front with one man to sort of reach the try line, and he looked like he might have pulled up a bit.
Yeah. And you reckon it's a hammy then?
Yeah, which he's just come back from. So let's cross our fingers that that's a sort of minor niggle, and the next 5 weeks will just be able to recover from that.
Well, I think we'll put that to bed because basically it was a good game, but it achieved nothing. So let's move on.
We're putting it to Bedford.
We're putting it to Bedford.
Well, okay.
And in fact, that is the reason why
How smooth was that segue?
That was very good. And in many ways, that's the reason why we're not in the next round, because of that loss at Bedford. Which, anyway, we've got a couple of people have commented on the back of the game. Andy Davis, he was a bit cutting, actually, on Instagram. He said that when you're a man down in the centre and still try to run it from 22, this was the first half when Bernard got sent off, was carded for a sort of cynical. He was making the point that like that, that was a bit stupid. Like, we maybe don't run from the 22 when you're man down. He wasn't happy with the first half, but he said we pulled it back in the second half and it was a good win. So he was happy in the end. Brisley, he said, Harry Byrne, can we please sign him? I'm not a huge fan of kicking as it usually is aimless, but when he gets it right, it's a real attacking threat and he booms it away with aplomb.
I love that word.
Great word.
Love it.
And not need.
It sounds nice off the top.
It's an onomatopoeia, isn't it? Aplomb. So, well picked up. And then we've, Byrne is a quality kicker. So let's leave it at that.
I mean, there's no doubt. The talent, I don't think we'll sign him now.
Paul Gallen, he said, why no TMO? Because there was no TMO and it would have been very useful. And I think there were some people around us who were listening to the ref mic and it was actually working apparently, and saying that Christoph Ridley was like basically saying to players all the way through, like, mate, I did my best there. I gave what I could see and it just shows.
But that is the trouble, isn't it? Because you're used to having a TMO every week. Yeah. And then you take that TMO away. That's your cushion.
I mean, we respect Christoph Ridley. He's a great referee, but he had to just see what was in front of him. Some dubious lino decisions again, maybe because of no TMO, but it delivered.
It does make you realise that these top refs who ref Prem, Super 14, whatever, or our refs, and then they go down to something like a Prem game. It is. It's hard for them really because they are used to it.
They need a team around them.
Yeah, they need a good team. But there was a few. I mean, there was a lot of. You could tell there was issues because there was a lot of Fitz was chatting to him quite a lot, and I'm sure. I mean, unfortunately, there's been no highlights because it wasn't on TNT and it wasn't on anything because they didn't even have any highlights in the game, so there was nothing on the screen. I've seen a couple of clips on Twitter which clearly are from the club's feed because you can hear the coaches in the background going line break like that. So it was interesting. It was it felt like I've said before with Prem Cup games there's less pressure. It felt like a purer game of rugby. It was like there was going to be mistakes from the ref and the players just have to deal with it and just make sure that they make it obvious.
I mean, the thing is that we should say that wasn't a game with no jeopardy. There was, we needed to qualify.
Yeah, we did.
And I think we should have had a TMO. And I think we should have had...
But I don't think we were ever going to qualify, really, even with 5 points. Yeah, that was the thing. Enough. I think that it was the Bedford game that did us.
Yeah.
We needed other things to go our way, and it was never going to happen. When you looked at who was playing who, I don't think it was...
Well, we said that in a week on our WhatsApp group, didn't we? Chances.
Yeah. But anyway, so it was good fun. And then the other point we had was, why is the Premiership Cup match experience so low rent? And I think this was Paul Gallen as well. And I think maybe he feels that they could big it up a bit more, just because it's Prem Cup. It's a live game of rugby. It's you should be making every effort to get people down there and stuff like that. And maybe that's where Paul's coming from. I'm not quite sure there. I kind of know what he means, but it's almost as if everyone's not that bothered. But I don't know. I actually quite liked it. I think it's a tricky one.
Well, if no one was that bothered, why was there 17,000 fans down there?
I know what he means. I think he just means that maybe he didn't feel like the stadium was like, I don't know, the bars, like, because someone else has made the point that, the bars, there were queues for the bars. It was, and
you boys were saying it was bad, wasn't it?
And I don't think, I've come to the conclusion that under the Dolman, and that's all I can talk about because that's the ones I see, I don't think, there were queues all the way back. And people were queuing just at kick-off in the second half. There was still people
missing most of the second half.
So part of me's thinking, why are you doing that? Like, are you that desperate? It was pretty cold. I don't know. Like, are you that desperate for a beer? And the second thing is that I just don't see how they can make it any quicker because rugby is a social drinking. That stadium, that Dolman stand was perhaps designed for football, where there isn't so much in-game drinking because it's not allowed. So maybe there's just no answer because they did put those machines in and then they have to stop those because it queues the other way.
It does.
Well, that's the trouble. It's too busy. And also you get the queues crossing, don't you?
Yeah.
Like you get the toilet queue a mile long and then that interferes then with the beer queue. And then and it's I don't know. It's
I just think it's just not... Ashton Gate wasn't designed for drinking as much. And rugby fans like a social drink. So...
Well, like you say, it was designed for football.
Yeah.
And... football, you might get
Maybe it's something we could
down
come back to in a later pod. Ideas, although I don't feel like I've got any.
No.
And then the last thing was Nick Howell, another big friend of the pod. He raised the point of selection inconsistency, and this is the kind of bigger picture of the Prem Cup, is did Pat put the right team out against Bedford given their performance against Bath, also throwing the Reds game and hacking off season ticket holders? So just to those people that maybe don't know, is that we had a season ticket game against Queensland Reds that we put out a very, very, very weak team, partly because we had injuries, partly because we also had the game at Ampthill the next day. And at that point, we were thinking we want to qualify. Mm-hmm. And the thinking, I understand, is that we needed to score loads of points. And that was based on us assuming we'd then beat Bedford away. Bedford played pretty well against Bath the weekend we beat Ampthill, but still lost. And then they put out a second team against us, and we put out an averagely strong team and lost. And therefore kibosh this weekend. So the question is like, was it all just, why did we faff around with it all? But I think the answer to that is we shouldn't have lost to Bedford. And I think Pat was clear. When I went to the fan forum, he was asked that question, and he basically said, I put a strong enough team out against Bedford to win, and they didn't win. And then you're thinking, okay, well, whose fault was that then? Is it your fault, or is it the players? And actually, there were a lot of things. The conditions apparently were terrible. We didn't play that well. There was a bit of, I don't know. It's a difficult one.
Well, it's not that difficult, I don't think.
No?
I think you're making it difficult. I think we could have fielded a lesser team against Ampthill and still put loads of points on them.
Yeah.
And then we put a stronger team against Bedford. I know, there's no way Pat Lam would have picked that team thinking we're going to lose to Bedford, obviously.
No.
But I think it was quite obvious that the weaker squad goes to Ampthill and still beats them. Yeah. And I don't think actually we needed to qualify. I didn't think we needed to put 60 points on them or whatever. No. But I think that would have been the logical way around how we rotate that squad. Personally, I don't know what you think, Miles, but that's what
talk about the selection.
Yeah,
sort of issue.
You went to the Q&A in the week. Yeah, and we'll talk about that in a separate point. But am I correct in the fans that said Pat said I put out a good enough team?
Yeah, that's what we just said. Because by the way, listeners, Miles has just been to the toilet.
Sorry,
he's just missed everything we just said. So basically, I don't think Miles is going to add much to this because he's going to basically say what we've just said.
Well, exactly.
I think that the issue was that when we played Australia A, earlier in the season, in the first round of the Prem Cup, we put out a really strong team against Australia A that wasn't a season ticket game. Yeah. And then it wasn't that well attended. And then we got humped by Bath the next day, 70-0 when Jan Thomas was captured. And then when the next round of the Prem Cup comes and we've got the Queensland Reds game that is a season ticket game, we don't put out a team at all. And basically, so the point, and then we reverse it. Now, the point is that Pat's at the forum was asked this, and he said when they planned the Australia game and the Queens Reds, it was because it was autumn internationals and Six Nations. There was no Prem. The Prem stuff came out later, and he said, okay, but even when that happened, when you layer on the injuries, all that, he said that basically. The Queensland Red game, he said, I ran out of players. I was running out of players, and I rang Queensland Reds and told them what we were going to do in advance. Ultimately, I quite enjoyed the Queensland Reds game because I actually saw some proper, and it was but it was actually quite a nice night. So, I don't know. It was just, I think people are a bit confused about, it was a sort of change of selection strategy, wasn't it? But then that was because they wanted to get game time and, it's the whole, I mean, if it's going to say something, it's just the whole thing is a mess, really, isn't it?
I think that's it. But, as we know, the Australia game was in effect a pay-per-view game, wasn't it? Yeah. And so I absolutely agree. You couldn't put out a shoddy third team game because people had paid good money to go to it. So we had no choice. And okay, despite us getting smashed by Bath the next day, I think that's a bit of irrelevant. In my opinion, and you might feel the same, I think we put out the wrong two teams against Bedford and Ampthill.
Yeah.
You look, Bedford are second in the league in the championship, right? And I know
strong
side. We've played at the Mene Field before, and I think we've always struggled a little bit. It was a greasy service, horrible win, and you might say that the weather was bad, but like you said, Lee, It's rugby. We play the game in the winter. So I'm not really buying that, I'm afraid
And
to
actually,
say.
a lot of people were pretty annoyed about the Queensland Red game, wasn't it? That the season ticket holders felt hard done by, let down on that one. And
well, I mean, if you'd have got that call from Pat Lam saying, I'm really sorry, but, the calendar has worked against us. You're bringing in, like, Lewis Liner's son and some Wallaby internationals.
Lewis Liner's son? He must has he even got a son? You mean Michael Liner's son? Yeah.
Michael Liner's son, I'm really sorry, but the calendar has not worked in our favour. I get that, but I imagine you'd be like, well, that's pathetic. We've come here to do 2 tour games out of season, and you're putting your thirds up, and ultimately it showed, didn't it? So I get what Pat was saying, but as a fan, we haven't progressed. That was his one aim. He said that, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
We need game time.
He put his own neck on it.
He put his neck on it. We need game time to go through to the knockout stages.
We don't want to have a gap, is exactly what he was saying.
But team selection, it's not been delivered. I'm just saying, from a fan's point of view, we have now a 5-week gap. With the correct team selection on the correct game, we probably could have got over the line. That's my opinion.
And it's all right saying we'll get players back from injury, but you can't match. You can't on the training ground. You can't do the things you could do in a match situation, can you? It just it's as competitive as it is.
Yeah.
It's not a competitive match situation.
You're right. I mean, the fixtures has screwed us over a little bit. Let's not deny that. And I understand the hands have been tied. So, I get that. But we just, what was said hasn't been delivered.
Overselling, under-delivering. Sounds
Maybe.
like my life. Right.
It's almost
we
like
need to whip on because we're running
with Uber.
It is. That was a question that's about to come. Let's very quickly. You did mention the fan forum. I'm going to whip this quickly because
go for it. You went there,
we kind of
you,
covered a few things that were said in that, and that was one of them. But most of it was actually about the club talking about recruitment, talking about the academy structure. They had Gethin Watts, who's the head of recruitment. They had John Barnes, who's a new academy guy who came from Hartcliffe, who's a Bristolian, but has been at Hartcliffe 14 years and has set up a really good thing.
Hartbury or Hartcliff?
Not Hartcliffe. Sorry,
I was going to say he's one of my favourites.
He used to work.
He recruited to Hartcliffe.
Actually, talking about that,
Maybe he's from Hartcliffe.
He used to work in Hartcliffe. But talking about people that used to work in places like Hartcliffe and Withywood, we met your old teacher, Rich Berry, at the Queensland Reds game. Because he's the safeguarding officer for the club, and he was on the pitch. And we were trying to get an interview with Michael Liner, and Rich Berry was there. And then when we got it, he was like, "Oh yeah, I listened to the pod, and I used to teach Lee." Like that.
That's bonkers, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's bonkers. So anyway, so I can't even remember what I was saying then. But
I lost train of thought.
what was I talking about?
Someone just put their face against
Someone's
the window.
just put their face against the window. Anyway, whatever it was I was talking about, and I've completely forgotten what it was. What were we talking about?
Fan forum.
Oh yeah, the fan forum. Gethin Watts.
Yeah.
Oh no, John Barnes. Who's from Hartbury, not Hartcliffe. He sounds like a very. To me, they gave us a lot of info about recruitment strategy, which I thought sounded brilliant. They do use a lot of data. The way they got Harry Byrne really quickly, they've been tracking him. They track players, but it's very much about the right players for Bristol and fitting into our game plan. Yeah. And somebody had asked the question: is that the reason why we've hardly got any England players? And Pat Bass said yes. He said I think there are loads of players. Fitzy, for example, James Dunn, who are good enough to play for England, but they're not going to get picked at the moment because we play rugby one way, and I'm not going to. And Steve Borthwick basically plays rugby another way. That's kind of the implication.
Fair enough.
But obviously there are a few in there. But I still think that he said they just got to keep playing, and they will get recognised.
I do feel we should just pick up on it. Actually. It is pretty disgraceful that our players who we actually feel are good enough, to play international rugby, it is just such a kind of opposite end of the scale at the moment with England, isn't it? And
I mean, I think the James Dunn is a great example that they pulled up. I'm not saying playing, but they pulled up the guy from Gloucester, Arthur Clark.
Yeah.
And I think this guy's not even like established Premiership player.
No.
James Dunn was established last year, and he's established this year. And we did talk to James about this, and his take on it is like he was disappointed because he couldn't understand it. But he thinks there is a kind of, you come through an RFU pathway and there is a hierarchy, and it made me think that there is a way of thinking, and if you're not part of that, it's much harder. People might say, well, Randall's in it,
and feels like that,
and Genji's in it, but then there are going to be players that go out of it. But even the England A squad, we've got two.
Only two.
Like two, and you could say we could have more. Like Fitz Harding, why is he not even in it?
How come Fitz and Dunny aren't in that?
And Fitz Harding is not just a Premiership regular; he's a captain.
I know.
He's a regular. He doesn't get injured that often.
That was a farce.
So I think there was. So
it's a farce.
The other thing that is a bit of a farce was they talked about the reorganisation of the kind of structure of the catchment areas for academy, and all I can say is, because I can't remember, but we have been stitched up basically, and we are potentially, we have 40 schools and Saracens have like 400 or 80. And the point, and he said all that, and I don't think. But what I liked was John Barnes said, look, that's the hand we've been dealt. And we can't change that. So what we're going to do is we work into a positive. Well, that means we can actually focus in on schools, quality, and they did talk a little bit about how he wants to get more networking with schools and school teachers that can talent identify early.
Yeah,
because technically, kids don't get into an official academy till under 15. That's the RFU. But he said that's crazy. We've got to identify people way before that. He sounded like he knows what he's talking about. Gethin Watts sounded like he knows what he's talking about. So I thought it felt like there's real good sustainability in the future.
That's really encouraging.
And we should also say, like Genji, what he's doing with the young kids as well now. And do you know what I mean? It's all positive. There's going to be loads of Ellis Genges out there. Loads of Ellis Genges.
Yeah. They've got to find a few more of them.
Exactly. It's giving them the pathway to get through.
The other things was interesting. Pat said that we have got the third lowest playing salary
of the league,
sort of budget.
I think we realise that.
And he said that the reason why Wasps, London Irish, and Worcester went bust is because they got bad financial directors. He said basically, you get given a budget, you work to it. Steve Lansdowne has given me a budget. We agreed it's going to be less because what we're trying to do is get through the younger players, and it has been tough. We've had injuries, and he said, we've had multiple injuries in similar positions, like lock and fly off, has not helped. But he said that's the reality. That's the budget I was given, and that's what we've got to work to. And Steve Lansdowne has said, we have to be bringing through the younger players, and you could say on that basis we have.
Right? Yeah, we have. We have. Without that, I mean, obviously Fitz, Dunny, we've had these players come through, and that's great. But I kind of do feel it's a little bit, Steve Lansdowne saying that, but to the detriment of us being the third lowest in the league. When
I say Steve Lansdowne saying that, I'm not sure Pat said Steve Lansdowne. I think it was about. I've assumed that. I think the reality is that and I think it's sensible. We can't buy success, but Pat didn't say that doesn't mean it's going to go up next year. He didn't say that next year, because we are. We're going to have people like James Dunn are going to be a year older. They're going to be even better at the price they're at the moment. Therefore, we can afford to go and buy it. So, and he said the reality is, the other interesting thing he said is that when he talks about good players moving on, like Shido, Dan Thomas, he said basically when I've got competition from below, so people he said basically Fitz Harding did for Dan Thomas, because Fitz Harding was good enough, and he says when those younger players are good enough, and I can't guarantee my existing players who are game time, I will say to them, I want you to go and play somewhere else.
And to be fair, from the ex-players that we've interviewed, they've always said that Pat Lam's very fair, very on the ball, very clear, and being honest and open with players.
Yeah. So it makes me think he whatever people say, he has got a good eye for what we're doing here, and he works with his owner. And I don't know. I just feel we've got one of the richest owners in the league.
why wouldn't Lansdowne pump in enough to win things? Why wouldn't he do that? Because if they're looking at
because he's been funding Bristol City for so long.
Well, I mean, the thing is, but the academy system has got him through the football side because obviously we've sold, like City have sold Semenyo, we've sold Joe Bryan,
who played against Southampton at the weekend. Bournemouth and looked $1 million. Anyway, let's.
Do you know what I mean? But it's a different game, and I kind of think like we're that close. And it's not like he hasn't spent money, because I know. Like,
I think maybe what we should do, in fairness, is have this conversation at the end of the season and see what's happened, because we might win the league, because we're in a pretty good place. It'll be like, hang on a minute, Lee, we're in second place. But it's a good thing to chat about at the end. I think.
But this stage of the season, we are seeing who Bath have signed for next season, aren't we? As outsiders, and we're,
but they've got a good academy. They've got a lot of players who have come up.
We used to be called Moneybags Bristol, and we were slated for years and years and years. And you saying that is really interesting. We've got the third lowest cap budget in the year, and you're right. We are in second place, but so the detriment of a lot of injuries and squad. So you're right. We'll have this chat.
I think it's an end of season chat.
I think
so. We'll see where we finished up.
End of season live pod chat.
Yeah, could be. Right, let's finish off because we've got to finish off because we're going on a bit. I suppose we haven't done one for 2 weeks, so does it matter? People don't have to listen, do they? They could fast forward. They could put it on double speed. Yeah, they could put it on double speed and get through it half the time. In fact, to be honest, that's what they do as soon as they hear me speaking. Apparently, they just put it on double speed. That's what my wife says.
So now we've had a bit to drink, they just fast forward, don't they?
Right, couple of things. I'm on number 5. Last thing, other things I've called it. Right, England Day. Miscellaneous. England Day, George Kloska, Gabriel O'Gray. Thoughts, Lee?
Great for them both.
Yeah.
Still think Fitzarden, Dunny,
which you just said.
If Batley was fit, he would. Yeah,
and I think Batley would be in it.
I think so.
Kloska, I think it's a great story. Love Kloska.
Yeah,
like you love him as well. He's a proper Bristolian, done well. Lad. And I've met him a couple of times, and he's a very humble sort of guy. Yeah. And I just hope he has a great game. And I think he's in a really difficult position. He's gone from back row to hooker to looser. We're not talking about some fancy winger here. We're talking about some young lad who sticks his head where it hurts.
I mean, he's done the hard yards and he's getting the credit that he deserves now.
And he's not just a scrummager. We've seen him. I mean, earlier in the season, Genge and Kloska were referred to as the Carling and Guscott of Bristol. So he's got a bit about him as well. He's got some nice hands as well. So let's hope. And me and Miles hopefully we're going to watch it next week. So hopefully we'll see him.
I am. I've got tickets. Hopefully not all that. So that's next Sunday, 1 o'clock down at Ashton Gate, England Day versus Ireland.
I think there's quite a lot of tickets available. I had a quick look. So. Yeah,
there's some decent prices going. And let's hope that George Kloska and Gabriel O'Gray get picked.
Right, number 2, Steve Hamilton wrote in and he said, with the confirmation that Max Malins is leaving at the end of the season, what are your thoughts on the 15 shirt for the future? If you would recruit, who would you like to see join the Bears? Well, we all wanted Santi Carreras, didn't we? And we all got that wrong. And he went to Bath. So we obviously know good at that. I mean, we all. I don't know. What do you think? Do we need another 15?
Well, I don't know. I guess it all depends on recruitment, I think, between now and then, because we all know Pat Lam likes players that can be playing different positions. Utility players, So I think that, we've already got a couple of players there that can play fullback.
We got Laner's having a good season, and he's still got at least a few more seasons in him.
Absolutely.
We got Tom Jordan who could play fullback. Yeah. We could see McGinty and Jordan in the same team, a bit like Smith and Smith for England. We've got Sam Worsley. Sorry. Yeah. Is he Joe Worsley's son?
I think he is, isn't he?
Anyway, because that was I haven't looked that up because there was a lot of chat about that, like Melonhead. Joe Worsley used to be called Melonhead, didn't he? And he went to France. I used to love Joe Worsley when he played for England. He's just Melonhead. But anyway, I need to clarify that. I know you'll know that. Matt Crete will know that. So Matt, let us know. Yeah. Is Sam Worsley Joe Worsley's son? Sure of it. But I was just worried. Do we need it based on? But then we got Jimmy Williams as well. But then we've always said he shouldn't really we need him as a 12.
I think he's going to play 12, isn't he, if he plays? But
I think
it's a good question, though. And the question, actually, what he's saying is we're losing a world-class player.
Yeah, we are.
Do we need a world-class replacement?
And you know what? I said,
Which we probably do.
He's only played 32 games over two stints, and it's disappointing. But he scored 21 tries.
Yeah,
he is a try machine, and that you can't buy that. So
and we will be sad to see him go as well, because I think he's absolute quality player, but we haven't got our pennies worth out of him.
We haven't. I mean, he's clear to be a little bit injury prone. I mean. Going back to Sarries, it would appear, wouldn't it? I think I would sit on the fence. We're not going to sit on the fence. I think we need an out-and-out 15 to back up Rich Lane, who has had a phenomenal season, but it just takes one more injury. And if something happens to AJ, who's 38, 39, probably his last season with us, and Tom Jordan has to slot in at 10, we're completely stuck.
I tell you what,
I think Jordan would.
Yeah,
10, wouldn't he?
Yeah, that's what he is. That's what he played for Glasgow.
It's all well and good flipping.
We've got Elizalde, because Elizalde has played 15 a little bit. He's very young, very raw. He played 13 yesterday.
He didn't have a great game. We didn't mention him, did we?
He wouldn't be your first choice.
No, but he's a backup. So we'll see. It's a difficult one. We haven't really answered the question, but we've done our best.
We haven't answered the question. I mean, he goes back to Sarries with our blessings. We've been flipping unfortunate because of his injury crisis this season, and it's hard to sort of, it's hard to admit that we've had. You're right. Good value out of him.
I always fancy that. I always remember that marketing thing when he came back, and it was Shido and Randall were looking at it, and they were saying, it's amazing how someone with such a sloppy rig could be so good. I always remember that, sloppy rig. So he'll be going back. 15s, and I'm sure the coffee houses of Clifton will be missing him as well.
But maybe, in a couple of pods' time, we'll talk about fullback and who we would like to be.
Yeah.
Right. I agree. Brisley got on it again. Sponsorship woes. He said, it's not the club's fault, but supporter shirts now emblazoned with Habu, who have cut times with. I've got all 3 shirts from this year that were presents from my late wife, so I'll keep them as the best for ages. Interested on your thoughts on this, and if the club should replace the Habu ones for all supporters, because all the players get new ones, don't they? Presumably not cost effective, but might be a nice gesture. I think Brisley, it's unrealistic to think that they're gonna give everybody. I mean, they could just get a Mashoto sticker that we could stick over Habu, or at least get give us a white pen that we could rub the Habu.
I mean, the thing is, it was out of the club's hands, wasn't it? It was something that
really. Should you do a multi-million-pound sponsorship deal over 5 years with a company that no one's ever heard of?
Well, that's a different subject.
Yeah, that's a different subject.
Maybe a 3-year, which is.
They just
normal, isn't it? 2 or 3 years.
They reminded me of that car company. Is it Cinch or Kazoo that spend a shed load of money on branding and
stadiums off,
and actually don't necessarily spend enough time and money on what they actually should do.
And to be fair, you did say that quite early.
I did.
You did say that quite early.
But who are they?
Sponsorship.
Is the e-marketing market big enough?
Who are they?
It worries me that you build, if you're a startup and you go too big on sponsorship, you kind of. It's like it's like a Ponzi scheme, isn't it? It's like you're not really doing anything. You've got to establish your
brand
operation. And I mean, as far as I still don't really understand what Habu do.
No. They package things,
but they just I don't know. They like know. Amazon. They deliver.
What does e-fulfillment even mean?
I think all they do is that they basically just deliver stuff. But of course, retail is completely recession. It affects the society, and if things go up and down, it's not.
Well, I know why they're probably struggling. Because all that duct tape they used to use on their cardboard has all been used by Claire Thomas on her raft.
It's all been used by the Bristol Bears raft. Yeah. Nice. I like the way you've linked that back in. Right. So we don't know. I think Brisley, it is a bit annoying. Maybe it'll just. I mean, I've still got. Let's look on the bright. I've got a Too Good International shirt as well, and that was another sponsor that went bust.
Barry Too Good. He folded, didn't he? Too big, too soon.
I would say
that's why we're not sponsoring shirts.
Ultimately, those shirts were obviously from his dear wife, and they'll always be treasured, no matter what names on the cuff, on the front.
And exactly.
I mean, anyway, on the bright side, we appear to have mid-season suddenly got a new sponsor.
We have.
Well, you're right. Not that we're going to change our shirts, but the players have got a new sponsor, which was an existing sponsor.
Yeah.
I agree, which was banded around the stadium. And if a couple of wise fans had Googled it, it would appear that it would be a Botswanan game reserve.
It's sort of upmarket eco lodge kind of thing in Botswana,
Which is
right up your street, Miles, isn't it?
By who?
Happened to be owned by the Lansdowne family, but they've stepped in.
That's
and,
fine.
Yeah.
There's be some sort of transferring of money across. So fair play.
Fair play. But how do you segue from one sponsor into another with some seamless marketing?
Well, it's obvious. You tell us, Miles.
Well, okay.
You tell us.
So I think we're going to have a mild marketing goat. However,
You go to the safari of Bristol, don't you? Which is where?
However, it's bigger than a goat. It's an elephant. So we're trying to market some Botswanan game reserve. That's realistic. Not many of us can afford to go on in the bleak winter of Bristol. And fair play. Let's get the players involved and let's think like, okay, we're moving from e-fulfillment to game reserve. I tell you what.
It's still e-fulfillment, elephant fulfillment.
We're in a city with a zoo. Brilliant. I've got an idea. I'm going to plug it to you. How about let's send the players to something like the Bristol Zoo project where there are, am I incorrect? There are some game reserve animals on. Get them involved.
You've got cheetahs.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
But the marketing chap says, no, that's too expensive. How about we go out the back of the HPC into Lee Woods with the men's and the women's team. We throw a few balls around during winter when there's no leaves on the trees to emulate the Botswanan game reserve, and let's make it better. Let's bring along some animal noises to emulate the animal. So you can see where I'm getting at. I mean, it's a marketing. Where are we going with this?
Do you know what?
You're not a fan then, Miles?
I'm not a fan of it.
When I saw it, I thought Miles is going to rip this to shreds.
I love the men's team. The kit's amazing. But Bernardia Bansi van Jensberg, Renika Bonner in Lee Woods.
Who we just signed someone else? Who's Bansi van Jensberg?
Bernard Bansi in Lee Woods with ivy growing up a tree and elephant noises. No! It's just been so badly done. I've got to pull them up on this.
You said it was a minor goat. It sounds like a
Bristol
stampede.
Bears marketing is sublime, but on this occasion, it's a massive fail.
Anyway, boys, we got to
the
stop.
back of my head is actually hurting. I've been laughing so much.
That is good. So,
can I just say
so
that just summarise. I think the marketing of this transition was not really up to scratch.
And the irony is, I vaguely remember back in the day that they did do some promotions up at the Wild Place, like when they were Miss Bears.
Yeah.
I've definitely seen them go up there because there's like a Bristol Bear up there, so they've definitely got a relationship.
Yeah. Anyway, I think
it was one of those jobs. It had to be done quite quick.
I agree. I agree.
It was a last minute lesson plan.
As we know, we're a fans podcast. We love Bristol Bears. We love the marketing, but we do like to mock a few things that are done a bit last minute. So tongue in cheek.
What, a bit like this? Yeah. This pod.
Tongue in cheek. It was a bit funny.
And we should say, actually, all joking aside, brilliant for the Lansdowne family to step in at the last minute and sort it all out.
Absolutely.
That must have been.
And if they need anyone to go out and review the new Eco Lodge from a kind of down with the kids, sort of down with the fans sort of thing, then obviously we're available every time.
Immediately in the winter.
But Steve might have to provide his private jet as well. Right, boys, I think there were a couple of other questions, but we really have got to stop now. So I'll maybe leave those to another
Next
time.
pod.
So, because we've gone way over. I mean, talking about the salary cap and budgets, I mean, we've gone way over our time budget, boys.